So with that, Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback, is joining us live. So my point about the leverage, right now he's a declining asset. There is a way that he becomes an ascending asset, which is, you go to the draft and one of these teams doesn't get a guy. Is that now the best move, or do you think he moves off the board here in a couple days?
Yeah, it might be. The Bears have explored different options with Justin. And I think one thing that kind of, struck them at the combine when they're going through the paces with Caleb, and Caleb's checking every box, was, how some of their suitors were operating at the top of the quarterback market, right? So they'd have to wait, they thought, to let the top of the quarterback market settle and then see what there was out there. And things went the wrong way for them there. Atlanta, a potential suitor, went and wound up getting Kirk Cousins. Pittsburgh, a potential suitor, wound up getting Russell Wilson. And so by waiting, then they wait for those two teams. Those two teams obviously go in a different direction, land the guys that went through first for them, and then you look at Justin versus the rest of the quarterback market. And I think what the league's telling us now is that there isn't a drastic difference between Justin Fields and Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew and Sam Darnold and all these other guys that were out there. And remember, all those other guys that are out there and don't require draft picks coming back.
Right.
And so I think they sort of got caught between those two. The Bears did. And now, you look at it, and if you're Chicago, I think you say, okay, like, we're going to reset a little bit here. We're going to bring Caleb Williams in for a 30 visit after his pro day next week in Los Angeles. And you just hope something develops where someone winds up having a need at that position. But right now, it does look like the options would be to send him to a team that collects quarterbacks as a backup where Justin can have a good year developing. Like, Philadelphia is one that sticks out to me as a team that has done that in the past, where they run a system that would fit him. They need depth at that position because Jalen Hurts does have some injury history now. And because of the way they play, you always have to be prepared for that. But certainly isn't where I think Chicago thought it would be a couple of weeks ago.
So, it's interesting. The Cowboys have done nothing. And what's interesting is we showed this earlier, there are real clear numbers that in Dak's career, when he gets run support, he's really good. Really good, exceptional. But he's only won 9 games in his career when he gets less than 100 yards rushing. He is very run game dependent. Mahomes isn't, Josh Allen isn't. That's okay. Some quarterbacks are, some aren't. So Burrow isn't. So my takeaway is, are you surprised at all? Running backs have had a great 4 days. Dallas hasn't done anything, and basically they have a tiny 6th-round pick, a tiny running back's their guy. What do you make of that?
Yeah, you have to wonder if they're a little gun-shy about spending on the position now. They got great production out of Zeke Elliott, then they paid him, and things went the other way. They got great production out of Tony Pollard. They paid him, things went the other way. If you look at their history over the last 10 years, Colin, their history tells us that they've gotten the best out of running backs when they've drafted and developed them themselves. So I think that's probably the way they go here, even though it's not a great class in the draft. Maybe the best running back in the draft is the kid coming back off the ACL, Jonathan Brooks from Texas. And just as far as like where they are, from a global standpoint, Jerry made that comment all in, and, it's obviously affected some of the narratives over the first couple of days of free agency. I'd remind you, like last year, their big move came much later in the offseason. It was a trade for Stephon Gilmore. I think the Cowboys have a swing or two in them. I think they're going to be creative about this. I don't think it was ever going to be on the first day of free agency. I think they viewed the top of free agency the same way a lot of teams did, which was it's a very thin market. And with the exploding cap, there were going to be a number of guys that were going to get overpaid at the top of the market. So, I think the whole plan coming into this was for them to operate creatively. And it wouldn't surprise me if they've got a creative swing or two left in them. Remember, it's only been 48 hours since all of this started.
Yeah. Are you surprised? If I would have guessed the teams that would go after Saquon Barkley, Eagles would not have been on my short list. I love him there, by the way. He gets a better O-line. They have star receivers, so you can't crowd the box. He's had safeties in the box for the last 6 years, and he's still been 7,000 yards, over 40 touchdowns. I like Philadelphia, but I am kind of surprised they went for it. Was it a Jason Kelce reaction? What did you make of the move?
No, I think it's a way to add another playmaker to their offense. Like they've already got the both receiver positions taken care of in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They've got Dallas Cowherd, who they're really happy with at tight end. And this is a way to add another element to what they're doing offensively. And I do think, you've gotten to the point, and the Eagles always look at these sorts of things, where running backs have become a bargain. I mean, do you know what receivers make $15 million, Colin? It's like Hunter Renfrow and Cortland Sutton.
Yeah.
And look, like running backs traditionally have been a bad investment, right? When you invest them later in their careers, it can blow up on you. But we're talking about $12 million a year, which is $3 million less than Hunter Renfrow and Cortland Sutton are making. I mean, you tell me what's a better deal, This is a guy who could be getting the ball 15, 20 times a game for you. So I think that's part of it, is reading the market that way. And then there's the reality of who they're up against, right? And I think that's what's so interesting about the running back market this year is we've heard forever what a bad investment running backs are in second contracts, right? There was a team in the Super Bowl that had the highest paid running back in the league on its roster, and maybe as its most important offensive player in Christian McCaffrey. So I think you'd be silly not to look at that and say that might have influenced a team or two. Maybe the Eagles themselves, who beat the Niners in the NFC title game a couple of years ago.
It is funny about that, Albert. Used to nobody paid tight ends, and then you get Travis Kelce and George Kittle, and you're like, we need to pay tight. If you're great at what you do, you're an asset. Christian McCaffrey, if I can remember the longest time, people didn't like to pay interior offensive linemen. The Rams now have 2 expensive guards. That's just, if you're great at what you do, you will eventually get paid. I've got to ask you, Russell Wilson of the Steelers feels like the right fit because their offense tends to have some drama, and Russell can kind of, sync it up.
Yeah.
Do you see it as a long-term thing or just hey, man, Mike Tomlin's going to do what Mike Tomlin wants, and any drama, he had it with Big Ben, he'll move off it. What do you make of Russ to the Steelers? Is it long-term potentially?
It's on the Steelers' terms for now, no question. When they brought him in, they set expectations. He is going to have to compete for the job. He's going to have to beat out Kenny Pickett. He had fished around, for a second year. That would have been one way to get around the offsets and get some extra money in the deal. The Steelers said no. So, on Friday, he went home after meeting with the Steelers. He huddles up with his group on Saturday and makes the decision that Pittsburgh's the place he wants to be. And obviously it gets done on Sunday. And so this was done very much with expectations and parameters set very clearly by Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. And I think it's ideal for Pittsburgh too. Like if Kenny Pickett's a rookie, I don't know that you want to put Russell Wilson in the quarterback room. But the kid gloves are off now. They got to find out about their first round pick. It's decision time on him. And so I think one of two things happens. Either Kenny Pickett, this lights a fire under him and he beats out Russell Wilson and the Steelers have their quarterback of the future, or Russell plays really well. Then you have your answer on Kenny Pickett and you move forward with Russell. Part of the whole logic here is, the point at which you're buying into Russell Wilson. And it's a point at which where you have leverage in this situation if you're the Steelers, and he's going to be motivated to rebound and prove a lot of people wrong. And I know that they feel like that's a really good place to be. Obviously, they still have some work to do at receiver, having offloaded Deontay Johnson, but I think the Steelers feel pretty good about where they are at quarterback now, given the sort of year they had last year, cycling through Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and the rest of it.
Anybody, nobody ever wants to say this, but free agent, we always have the lists of the winners. Is there anybody you didn't love it? Anybody, any team? Like I thought Buffalo moved off some really important team leaders in the room. I didn't love Buffalo's week. Your thoughts?
Well, see, that's the trouble though, Colin. It's that we're always going to look at the teams that are inactive and we're going to say that they're the losers. And the reality is, like, teams that are most active are usually the ones that don't win these things, So as far as teams, I had some questions about what they were doing. I'd have to think about that. The Chargers obviously have some big decisions to make over the next few hours here on the 4 guys with big contracts: Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm just trying to think if there's a team where there was some inactivity. I think the Panthers could have done more. And I wasn't wild about letting Brian Burns go so quickly. I think, $28 million a year for a 25-year-old pass rusher isn't a bad price.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure that they've done enough around Bryce Young. Deontay Johnson comes in and he had attitude issues in Pittsburgh. And if you want to look up like the history of skill position players being offloaded from the Steelers, right? Like productive ones, it's not very good, in their next chapter. And I don't need to name names, but you know who I'm talking about here. So I do wonder with Carolina, I'd like to see more of the plan. Like I like that they go get Robert Hunt from Miami and get a piece for that offensive line and get Bryce Young some protection. But I mean, look, like it's not like the clock's ticking already on finding out on Bryce Young, but you're going to have to find out over the next 2 years, And so I'd feel a lot better about it if there was a swing there, right? Like if the Brian Burns trade, moving Brian Burns off the roster coincided with acquiring T. Higgins from Cincinnati, something like that, right? So I'd say I'd come out of the first 2 days like wondering, okay, where are the Panthers going with, their young quarterback who struggled in year one in Bryce Young on his rookie contract. You're in that window right now. Do you have an aggressive move or two left in you? That'd be the question I'd have.
Yeah, good stuff. Now, I kind of think I agree with you on that. Buffalo and Carolina, some head scratchers, but Buffalo has Josh Allen, so they'll figure out ways to win games on Sunday. Hey, Albert, it's great seeing you as always. Monday Morning Quarterback, follow him, breaking stuff, and he contextualizes it about as well as anybody else does. So I appreciate you coming on the show, bud.
All right, thanks, Colin.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.